The Guardian recently published a piece entitled, "We Economists Have Done the Math. Growth is a Doomed Strategy. There's a Better Way," by Olivier de Schutter, Joseph Stiglitz, Jayati Ghosh, Thomas Piketty, Kate Raworth, and Jason Hickel. They say, quote, "Our roadmap has been shared by experts across the world, from UN agencies to grassroots movements. We call on political leaders at all levels to use it." For more than a century, economic growth has been treated as the primary solution to poverty. If the economy grows, we're told, prosperity will eventually reach everyone. But despite enormous increases in wealth, poverty, insecurity, and ecological strain remain persistent features of modern life. This presentation asks a different question. What if poverty is not simply a shortage of economic growth? What if poverty is a structural outcome of how our economy is organized? So we're going to explore how we can build an economy centered not on endless growth, but on human dignity, an economy capable of eliminating poverty while remaining within the ecological limits of our planet. We live in a world of extraordinary abundance. Humanity has generated more wealth than at any point in history. Technological capacity, productive power, and material output have all expanded dramatically. At the same time, millions struggle to meet basic needs. Housing costs soar. Healthcare remains inaccessible for many. Food insecurity persists. Environmental degradation accelerates. These realities exist side by side. The contradiction suggests that poverty is not simply caused by insufficient wealth. Rather, it reflects how wealth is distributed, how resources are allocated, and what our economic institutions prioritize. The dominant economic strategy has been remarkably consistent. Grow the economy and poverty will decline. This approach assumes that rising economic output will eventually benefit everyone through job creation, investment, and higher incomes. Yet the evidence is mixed. Growth has often been accompanied by increasing inequality, concentrated wealth, and environmental destruction. Economic growth can create benefits, but growth alone does not guarantee broad prosperity. The rising tide does not automatically lift all boats when some boats are anchored, leaking, or never allowed into the harbor. So our current system creates tremendous wealth, but it also distributes risk unevenly. Many people live one job loss, one medical emergency, or one rent increase away from financial crisis. Meanwhile, wealth and economic power become increasingly concentrated. This is often defended as a necessary trade-off for innovation and efficiency, but we should ask whether widespread insecurity is truly necessary or whether it is a consequence of institutional choices. An economy should not require large segments of the population to remain vulnerable in order to function. And traditional anti-poverty efforts often focus on managing poverty after it appears. We provide assistance to those who fall through the cracks. While those programs are essential, they largely address symptoms rather than causes. What if we shifted our focus upstream? Instead of asking how to alleviate poverty after it emerges, we could ask what institutional arrangements prevent poverty from occurring in the first place. That means redesigning the structures that determine access to income, housing, healthcare, education, and economic opportunity. Here we can compare two different frameworks. The first is the familiar growth-first model. Success is measured primarily through GDP expansion. Human well-being is expected to improve indirectly through market growth. The second is a rights-based framework. Here, success is measured by whether people can reliably meet their basic needs and live with dignity. Economic activity becomes a means rather than an end. The central question changes from how fast is the economy growing to are people flourishing? A dignity-centered economy requires structural redesign. Instead of relying solely on markets to determine access to life's essentials, we establish institutions that guarantee foundational security. This approach rests on three pillars: dignified work, universal access to basic needs, and directing capital toward public purposes. Together, these pillars create a system where poverty prevention becomes embedded within economic design itself. The first pillar is ensuring that work provides dignity rather than insecurity. This includes decent pay, predictable schedules, workplace democracy, and meaningful protections for workers. People should not have to work multiple jobs simply to survive, nor should they have little voice over conditions that shape a large portion of their lives. Economic participation becomes a pathway to flourishing rather than merely a struggle for survival. The second pillar involves guaranteeing universal access to essential goods and services. Housing, healthcare, education, childcare, and transportation are fundamental requirements for participating in society. When access to these necessities depends entirely on purchasing power, poverty becomes self-reinforcing. When access is guaranteed, people gain stability and freedom. This does not eliminate markets. It simply recognizes that some goods are too important to be distributed solely according to ability to pay. The third pillar focuses on investment. Today, capital primarily flows toward activities that maximize financial returns, but financial returns do not always align with social needs. Public institutions can help direct investment toward affordable housing, clean energy, public infrastructure, community development, and other long-term priorities. The question is not whether investment occurs, but who benefits from it and what objectives it serves. Even the most ambitious national reforms face constraints. Debt obligations, international financial systems, trade relationships, and global capital mobility can limit what individual nations are able to accomplish. Poverty reduction and sustainability therefore require cooperation beyond national borders. The institutions governing the global economy matter just as much as the domestic policies. So if poverty and ecological crises are global challenges, they require global solutions. This may involve debt relief, fairer trade agreements, international financing mechanisms, and stronger cooperation between nations. The goal is not charity. The goal is creating institutions that allow all countries the policy space and resources necessary to meet human needs sustainably. A dignified global economy requires rules that support shared prosperity rather than perpetual hierarchy. Economic decisions shape nearly every aspect of life, yet most people have little influence over them. Questions about investment, production, infrastructure, and development are often concentrated in the hands of a relatively small number of actors. A dignity-centered economy expands democratic participation in economic decision-making. Democracy should not stop at the ballot box. It should extend into the institutions that determine our collective economic future. Many of these ideas are not theoretical. Around the world, cities, regions, and nations are experimenting with new approaches. Cooperative ownership models, universal service programs, participatory budgeting, public banking initiatives, and movements focused on well-being rather than growth alone. These efforts are imperfect and diverse, but together they demonstrate that alternatives already exist. The question is not whether change is possible. The question is whether we're willing to expand and deepen these experiments. So GDP can be useful. It measures economic activity and helps us understand important trends. But GDP is not a measure of dignity, security, freedom, or human flourishing. An economy should be judged by how well it enables people to live meaningful lives while preserving the ecological systems on which all life depends. So we'll leave with this question. If our goal is not merely to increase production, but to eliminate poverty and expand human dignity, what kind of economic system would we choose to build? And what would it take to begin building it today?